Okay, picking up from where we left off yesterday, we talked a little bit about how we're going to be doing this response to reading thing. Remember, we're just going to keep it in the back of your binder. There's no tab for it, so whenever you need a new piece of paper, you just have to reach past it. And we'll continue on the front and the back of your papers just in one continuous fashion like I showed you yesterday. Okay, so if you guys look at my notebook here, notice I got 2 entries in there, and they're just separated by a line. Remember, multiple entries could be about the same book, and probably should be, especially if we're doing them daily or semi-daily. Let's go back to this. I'll show you earlier. Go ahead and move to the back. You get the most of that look like review?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So yesterday, I want to point your eyes and ears over here real fast. We talked about what we do as readers. Okay? We talked a little bit about what we do as readers, and often when we're reading, we're active with the text, and we're interacting with it, and we're thinking about questions we might have. Right? We oftentimes at the very beginning of a story or a movie, we're asking a lot of questions, and we're trying to figure out if those questions are going to come true or not, okay? Or what about those questions will be answered. We like to make predictions about things, right? We talked about this yesterday. We try to figure out who's going to be the dude that gets killed off, or who's going to be the couple that gets together by the end of the movie, or what kind of problem is going to happen in the movie, and if we can figure it out before the end. And what we found, as we talked a little bit about a lot yesterday, is that a lot of times when those predictions are actually proved wrong, and it's surprising, it's actually a little bit more fun and interesting, right? Because there was a shock, there was a twist, right? So questions and predictions. Sometimes we summarize. We have to kind of just reassess and reevaluate where we're at in the story, make sure that we've got it so far before we move on. That's not quite a full connection, but we do it sometimes when we read. We also like to make educated guesses and conclusions about what we're reading. We like to try to make and figure out certain what we would call facts or truths about what we're reading, or we kind of determine our own point of view about what's going on. That would be inferences and conclusions. And then yesterday we reviewed a little bit about our text connections, about how the book relates to ourselves, how the book relates to other books we've read, how the book relates to the world or to society as we know it, and also how the book relates to other forms of media, like movies, TV shows, songs, okay? Text to text, text to self, text to world, text to media. This all should have been reviewed. We all know how to do this. We all do this. Anyone catch that? We all do this. Today, we're going to start learning about what we're going to call signposts. There's going to be 6 of them. And these are just 6 really, really common threads that happen in almost all fiction books. Not nonfiction, so fiction. So when I ask for a signpost, for now, we know which genre do we have to apply that to?
Fiction.
Which one?
Fiction.
Not?
Nonfiction.
Thank you. Good. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Okay. Yeah, you can wait. This is for the people at home and ISS and other things like that. Remember, this is what your thing is supposed to look like. So everybody just check your reader response right now. We're not in your notes, we're in your reader response. It should be in the back of your binder. It should have responses to reading on the title line. You skip the space. And then remember the first time we did this, we want to make sure that we have the labels out to the left. So we wrote book and date. And then we put the book that we're reading's title down. And since we can't italicize the title, what should we do? Underline it. So please underline your book title. We put today's date out to the right. Make sure you please date it every time. You'll have to probably go into your book in a moment, so I want you to reach back into what you've read today and yesterday and your recent memory in your books, and think back to like a page or a roundabout area where you could find the page, where a light bulb went off, where a text connection happened, where you had a question, where you thought of making a prediction, where you made an inference or a conclusion, where you made some sort of connection to yourself or to another book or to society. Whatever your connection was, we're not going to do signposts yet. I want you to practice what we already know how to do. I want you to write a paragraph response to a moment in the text where the light bulb went off and you had one of those things happen. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Before you write your response, please make sure you cite the page number it was found on, and you cite also the text that created that light bulb. There's always that moment in what you read, you go, whoa, wait a minute. I have a question. Or whoa, I think this is going to happen now. Find the text that made that light bulb go off. Make sure you cite it, put the page number, and then try to get 3+ sentences today in your paragraph. So here's the deal about that. anytime we write these reading responses, I don't want them to be perfect. So don't worry about spelling and wording them correctly so much. What I'm more concerned about is right here, look at me, your train of thought. If I can determine what your thought process was in this, that's what you're doing your job then, okay? This is a writing exercise, yes, but what it's meant to do is get us warmed up for when we actually get to our writing unit. So I'm not so concerned about the writing mechanics right now. I'm more concerned about your thought. So that being said, don't make it perfect. Don't worry about making it perfect. Just get your thoughts on paper and write as fast as you can. Got it? I'm going to give you guys about 4 minutes to do this. This is about all the more time that I will ever give you to do this. Let's see what you can get done in those 4 minutes. That includes think time. That includes citing your page. And that includes writing your 3+ paragraph sentence. 3+ sentence paragraph. Any questions before we begin? Everybody know what to do? All right, get started. About 2 minutes left. You should probably get into your thoughts now. Okay? You probably have enough text written down. As long as you got one, start writing your thoughts, your connections, your questions, your predictions. Also, now that you've been going a little bit, try to think, am I summarizing right now? Am I summarizing the book right now? And if so, remember, that's okay. But I want you to keep the summary short, 3 sentences or less, and it always, listen, if you summarize, always has to be paired with some sort of other connection. A summary is not enough in this case. You may want to provide me with some context to what's going on. That's okay, but make sure that there's always some sort of connection, question, prediction, or signpost, once we do them, after your summary, if you are summarizing. You need to look at the board for that. Everybody stop. Heads down. That was 4 minutes. Who thinks they need more time? Who would like more time? You have 1 minute. That's all I can afford you. Okay, go. Great difference. Seconds. Please finish your thoughts. Get at least one thought written down. Even if it's not 3 sentences quite yet, it's okay. I love what I see Brangston doing. He's actually finished, but he's reading over his response just to make sure that it sounds correct and it makes sense. That's probably a pretty good idea. Last 20 seconds. Alright, remember your response to reading is going to stay in your binder, your ELA binder, in the very back. So just put it at the very front of all your loose leaf paper, and we will just continue this as we go throughout this rest of the semester and year. In the back where all your loose leaf paper is, does not go into any of the tabs. You should only have 1 page of notes in your fiction section. That being said, whenever you're done, I want you to clear your desk of everything except for this ELA resource binder right here. I want you to clear your desk of everything except for this ELA resource binder. We're going to do another response to reading probably tomorrow and get second practice. And after we get a few under our belt, we'll probably start asking you to turn one of your favorites in. One that you think you did really well, once we start getting a little bit better at them. But remember, I will be looking at these at some point, and I don't really know which one I'm going to take. When you get to your ELA binder, like I said, let's get everything off your desk. For people at home, the link for the video is in slides, and we can get you the text later. I want to turn to the yellow section where it says signposts. Okay, and then I want you to just stop there at this page. Don't turn it over yet. I'm going to point some things out first. But we're going to get the intro into what signposts are first, and then we'll talk about our first signpost today. Okay, people at home, we are actually in the signpost slides now. It should be the second slideshow after your response to reading exit ticket that we just did with the class. We're moving on to part 2 in the signposts. All right, so today we're going to be talking about one of the six major signposts, and these are just nicknames for things that a bunch of really smart people have come together for and told us that we find these commonly in most fiction texts. So we're going to just call them signposts just to make it easier on ourselves. But yesterday I pointed a few things out on the posters to you in the back of the room. Our first one's going to be listed right here, contrasts and contradictions. We're going to get to that in a second. But everything we go over today will be highlighted and have reminders on this anchor chart here, and also in the ELA resource binder you have in front of you, and also in this slideshow. So there's 3 places that you can find it, whether you're here or at home, if you need quick reminders about what this is and what we need to do with it, okay? So first, let's just talk about what a signpost is. So let's just track to the board. The only thing you need to see right now is the board. I'll direct you to the notes as needed, okay? That's why I made these handbooks, so you don't have to take all these notes, okay? So when you see signs like these, what do we gotta do? What are some things we gotta do? Yeah.
We have to read them.
Well, we gotta read them first, and then what's the second step after we read them?
Think about, analyze what they mean.
We gotta analyze and think about what they mean, and then thirdly, and probably the most importantly, we have to what, Mika? Yeah, we gotta follow them. We should probably do them, right? Otherwise, especially with this sign, the stop sign, if we don't follow that, that could be pretty dangerous for us, right? So signs are a pretty important part of our lives and how we navigate the world, right? The most direct analogy that we have is driving, right? Road signs, okay? This is an old one, but so a signpost, we know what these are. We have signs in the world, we pay attention to them, we do them. They're usually for our safety and other, making our lives easier, pretty much, right? So when we're reading, an author puts these signposts in the story as well for you to stop and notice. Okay? They don't want you just to read straight through and then have one sort of final comprehensive thought at the end. They want you to pay attention to things along the way, to gain clues, to navigate the story. And when you pay attention to these things and you know what to look for, you get more involved with the story. You might find details or notice details and clues that you have not noticed before, or you wouldn't have noticed before had you not paid attention to some of these signposts. It enriches the experience and makes the story that much better when we notice these things, okay? So, quick brainstorm. Turn to a table partner right now, and I just want you to discuss for about 30, 45 seconds or so, what are some signposts that we have in our everyday lives, you can use your text features here, that tell us what to do, what not to do, where to go, or what to look for, out for, and pay attention to. Just talk about some of the signs that you have in your lives. It could be street signs, it could be signs on social media or the internet. There's some signs on there too. Think about any kind of sign you have and see if you can come up with one of the most unique and creative ones. You got 45 seconds to chat. Go. Talk about what they do and what they tell you to do.
I'd say like passengers or the pedestrian walking sign shows you pedestrians are walking down, watch out for pedestrians, so you don't eat more than like
Like the people that are
Welcome back. We just started. Okay, we're just talking about signposts. Alright, did anybody come up with something that's not completely entirely obvious, like a stop sign? What's one of the ones you have?
I don't know if this would be a good example, but on Facebook, you know, when you scroll through a picture, you can click on, you have to hold down a emoji and then different feelings come up, so you can pick like a heart or like.
Okay, so the emoji signs, if you know to hold down on it, you can pick different kinds of emotions to show some sort of like, give your comment a little bit of oomph on Facebook,
like,
right?
Oh, that's terrible. You could just like put the thumbs down on the picture.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of saying gross, terrible, you can just go right with your emoji. That's a nice way to communicate. What's another kind of sign?
Like, it's different than those ones, the lights in the streets.
Oh, street lights. Yeah, we color code our lives. We know a green light tells us to,
no.
a red light tells us to, and a yellow light tells us to go faster because red's coming on. At least that's what some kid in my 4th grade class told me one time because his mom did that. So, like I said, authors put signposts in their books for us to navigate the book, to enrich our experience with the book and the story, right? This is supposed to be something that we interact with, that we're constantly thinking about as we read. So let's get into the first one. Go ahead and flip your page over to character contrasts and contradictions. I want you to take a quick 30 seconds. I want you to read through that page on your own. If you don't have one, grab one. Just flip, it's the first one. It says contrasts and contradictions. It says contrasts and contradictions. You're taking a quick 30, silent 30 to read over this. When you're done looking at the board? Did you?
Yeah.
10 seconds and final. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, let's look at the board. Look up here. There's some things to notice up here. What do we notice about these two words? Contrasts and contradictions. This is our first signpost, by the way. Everyone say contrasts and contradictions.
Contrast and contradiction.
I had about 80% of you there. Let's try that again. Contrast,
Contrast.
contradiction.
Contradiction.
Now there's something I heard in there and when I said it, and there's something that you should notice on the board. What do we see about these two words? Mika.
They both start with
Yeah, they both start with contra. Now, one thing I want to point out, we'll go into this a little bit more depth later in the year. When words, particularly in the English language, but in all languages, have the same sequence of letters that make the same sounds, like this, we call this a root word. Okay, it's not a full word, it's the root. when you recognize roots and they have the same sequence, they probably mean something very similar to each other, okay? Language is a code, so when the code looks similar, that means the meaning is probably similar. Does that make sense? So be on the lookout for this, especially like in test questions. If there's a word that you don't recognize, but you recognize part of the word, use that part of the word to figure out something about what it means. Does that make sense? So be on the lookout for those things. So what we need to know about contra is that it means against. And for contrast, it just simply means when a character does, says, or thinks something differently than what we would expect. Differently. Contradict is a little bit more specific. It's kind of like in math, if you've ever heard this before, a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle cannot be a square. It's kind of something similar. Contradiction is actually something that's exactly, completely opposite. Not just different, opposite. So let me give you an analogy. My brother and I are talking one day, and he says his favorite color is black. To contradict him, just because I want to pester my brother, I say my favorite color is white. Okay, those are opposites, right? However, if we start talking about desserts and I say, my favorite dessert is cake, and he goes, I'm going to contrast you. My favorite dessert is ice cream. Are cake and ice cream opposites? No, but are they different?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the difference between these two. Do you guys understand? Does that make sense? But for all intents and purposes, if you just understand contrast means different, that's going to be good enough. Got it? Anytime a character does, says, or thinks something differently, everybody repeat that to a partner next to you real quick. Go.
Does, says, thinks,
All right, in the next video, people at home are watching the Lion King video. You can do this on your own and skip through this if you'd like. What I'd like you guys to notice, who's seen this before? Cool, we're going to pretend like we haven't yet, all right? Here's what I want you to pay attention to. Scar's actions, particularly at the beginning of the clip, and his actions and behaviors at the end of the clip. Go. Okay, here we go.
Mufasa, quick! Stampede in the gorge.
Take note. How's Scar acting right now? What's he saying? How is he saying it? And what's his facial expressions and body language telling us about what he feels? Just think that to yourself. Moving on.
Simba's down there. Simba.
Okay, so we all know what happens. Stampede. Oh no! Simba's at the bottom. Let's go get him. See their facial expressions, right? Mufasa jumps down, grabs the guy. Now, does that look like the same thing he looked like earlier? So I'm kind of going, well, wait a minute here. I'm not quite sure yes yet. Alright, so we save the boy. Oh no! Okay, now. Mufasa makes it up on the rock cliff. We've already had a hey, wait a minute moment with Scar. Let's see if it comes true. Let's see if anything else happens. That doesn't look the same as earlier. Okay, so now at this point, I think we're pretty sure that this is completely different than how he was acting just about a minute ago, right? Okay, let's talk about it real fast. Because I think we all know what happens after this, right? Okay. This is an example of what your reading response would look like on paper, right? So we're just going to walk you through the same process. So now we're adding signposts to our things that we can connect to with the story. And our first one is what? Character. C and C, character.
contrast,
There we go. Let's try it all together now. Character.
contrast,
And.
contradiction.
Oh, that was so exciting. Thank you for dragging that out. Okay, so here's what we do. We put our book title down, The Lion King, the date, It's a video clip, so I don't have a page number. I would probably cite the moment we just saw. Scar has grabbed Mufasa on the cliff face and is now smiling very sinisterly, isn't he? Okay, that's the moment we would cite if we were willing to write that down. So the moment that happens, we need to stop, just like we did, and take 15 seconds to think. That's not really that long a time in your grand scheme of things, but it is a long time for your brain to work, especially in that moment, right? So we ask ourselves, what's your anchor question? It should be highlighted in your binders. What is your anchor question? Someone read it out loud for me.
Why is the character doing that?
Isn't that a reasonable question to ask?
Yeah.
Is that an overly complicated question? No, it's pretty simple, right? But it's a good question to ask. If the character acts, says, or thinks something differently than we would have expected them to or previously introduced to, in this case, Scar, well, we should be asking, why did they do this? This is probably something the author wants us to think about because they're giving us clues about this character's development. Usually we know characters change over time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the moment in time where we go, hey, here's a sign. Stop and think about what's changed about this character. So here's what I do. Well, I just want you to read this. What do you like to read? What are you reading all day? Anybody?
What do you want?
This rest here. This could be a possible response you gave for a character contrast and contradiction signpost. Go ahead.
I knew Scar wasn't
Go louder.
I knew Scar wasn't a saint, but it was surprising when he killed Mufasa. At first, he seemed genuinely worried about Simba's safety. After all, he is Simba's uncle and Mufasa's brother. Once we learned that the stampede is all a trap, it didn't take long to conclude that this was Scar's plan so that he could become king.
Okay, I just wanted to point out this word. I didn't mean you to reread that.
Okay.
That I'm making one of those things that we already know how to do, making conclusions, right? I can conclude now because we're pretty sure, we know what happens just a little bit later, but we're pretty sure at this point when he's got Mufasa by the claws, that this was a trap. He meant to do it the whole time, and that because we know Mufasa is king, we possibly can understand now based off Scar's behavior that he wants to become king. Would you guys agree?
Yes.
Okay, that's the I do part. Does that seem pretty simple to do? All right, nothing too complicated, I don't think, about that one. So, again, ask yourselves, why did the character act this way? Simple question, but it's worth asking and answering and thinking about at this point in time. Okay, oh, I skipped over something important. If you're noticing in your notes, this should match up. If you answer this question, why did the character act this way? We might get some clues. We might be able to make a prediction. We might be able to make an inference about the plot, how the story moves, okay? Or the problem in the story. This was the inciting incident to the main conflict in the story, wasn't it? This was the moment that the entire story changes. Mufasa's gone. Simba is thought to be dead, but exiled, right? And only to return later. This is the moment the entire Simba's conflict begins. His father's death by his uncle, right? This gives us entire insight to the plot of the story and the conflict. So, this is what we're going to do now. We are going to get into, flip the page to thank you, ma'am, on the next page. We're going to actually skip the first page. I'm going to show you a video clip so you can skip past the first page. We're going to do a we do now together on this story with character contrast and contradiction. So what I want you just paying attention to as the video clip goes and as we read on in a minute, are there any things that the characters do, say, or think differently than what we would expect? And if so, don't shout them out. Just think to your head, in your brain parts, and we'll go over them in a minute. Okay, we're going to break this story down into 3 parts. Now, one more note, when you're doing this at home, or when you're doing this in ISS or something of the like, please make sure you go into full screen mode because I put things like this in here so that you notice them. Okay? So you do need to be in full screen mode. And if actually you look at this slide without being in full screen mode, that's all you can see. Does that make sense? Because I put those things in there so that you pay attention to one thing at a time. So make sure that you do that if you are ever at home and you're doing this, okay? So you just click through, and if you notice, you can click here, we'll open it up to YouTube. At this point, people at home, you can go to the YouTube clip and watch it on your own. But here's the first note. It's really old. I think it's from the 70s, so just take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, this will take us through our first page on our short story, Thank You Man. You can follow along or just watch the video. But who can tell me, what are we trying to notice? What are we trying to notice? Things we don't expect the character to do, say, or think. Any other way you want to put that?
It's like conflict.
I'm sorry?
Conflict.
We're looking for, not conflict, changes in the character. Okay? Things that the characters do that are unexpected. Here we go. It's called Thank You Man by our guy, Langston Hughes.
Oh, you hear me? I said, dig low. You little rascal. Pick up my pocketbook, boy, and give it here. Ain't you ashamed of yourself?
Yes,
Why'd you do it?
I didn't aim to.
You lie. If I turn you loose when you run,
Yes, sir.
then I won't turn you loose.
Lady, I'm sorry.
Uh-huh. You got a dirty face. I've got a great mind to wash your face for you. Ain't you got nobody home to tell you to wash your face?
No.
Then it's gonna get washed this morning. You ought to be my son. I teach you right from wrong. Least I can do right now is wash your face for you. Are you hungry?
No, I just want you to turn me loose.
Was I bothering you when I turned that corner?
No.
But you had to put yourself in contact with me. Well, if you think that contact ain't gonna last for a while, you got another thought coming. When I get through with you, sir, you are going to remember Mrs. Llewellyn Bates Washington Jones. Come on.
Alright, I think the lesson is don't mess with that lady, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so how many of you know a person like Mrs. Jones? Or kind of like her, alright? Or you've seen something like her before. Good. So we can relate to these guys for a little bit. Here's what I want to point out. I went a little bit too far. So did we see anything that was a little unexpected in that video clip that we didn't expect her to do or him to do? Who had it? Who had something? What'd you have, Micah?
I expected him to get away with the purse. I didn't expect
Oh.
him to
You didn't expect him to get caught. Well, that wasn't necessarily unexpected. That was unexpected, but not something that the character did that was unexpected. I was a little bit curious about Miss Jones. Okay, so Roger tries to steal her purse. And then she catches him, she kicks him in the rear, right? But then she goes, "You got a dirty face." And I saw your face especially. You went, "Why don't you come home with me and we're gonna clean your face? Are you hungry? I bet you're hungry." And I'm going, wait, whoa, just, what? He just tried to steal from you, and you're gonna take him home where the rest of your things are that he could steal. Is that something like you would do?
No.
Is that something most people would probably do?
No.
No, I think we can make a fair assessment that people that catch a thief aren't going to invite them back to their house, right? That's something very odd. So at this point in time, I'm going, whoa, that's way weird. Okay, I don't know who Miss Jones is, and I haven't read a lot about her yet, but I do know how normal people act, right? And this is something that's going to go on, oh, I wonder why she's doing that, right? Why did the character act this way? So I start thinking, well, he is a younger boy. He's not an adult. That changes things a little bit, right? She notices his face is dirty. She seems very motherly.
Probably a grandma.
Maybe she's trying to take this moment to teach him a lesson. So I think about all this, and I come up with an answer to this question. Here's another reader response. I think Miss Jones notices the boy's face and he looks neglected, which could also be the reason why he was stealing in the first place, right? He doesn't have a lot of things. And we resort to stealing when we can't have other means to get them, like money or jobs, right? So Miss Jones seems like a very motherly lady, like we mentioned, and likely knows what a cared for child looks like. I'm going to end with a question here in my response. I wonder if she had a son herself. That's a good connection for me to have about her character, especially the way she's acting right now. Yes?
Her son might have been in trouble because like that, like tried to steal and whatnot. She
Her
doesn't
son
know how to
could, yeah,
deal
and
with
she
it.
knows how to deal with this, right? Very motherly. She didn't turn him in or anything yet, right? Which is probably what most of us would have done. Okay? So, let's see what we got left. I want you to grab a Post-it note. I'm going to try to read as fast as I can. In your notes or in your text, see where this first pink spot is? It's the second paragraph on the back of page 2. Sorry, second paragraph on the back of page 1. It is page 2. It says sweat popped. Give me a thumbs up when you get to sweat popped. Good. On the Post-it note, I just want you to write the moment, summarize, paraphrase what happened where you see another contrast or contradiction as I read. Any questions? This will be the last thing we do today. We got about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to try to go quick. Here we go. If you hear another one's coming up quick, I want you to write it down. Sweat popped out of the boy's face and he began to struggle. Ms. Jones stopped, jerked him around in front of her, and put a half Nelson around his neck, and continued to drag him up the street. When she got to her door, she dragged the boy inside, down the hall, and into a large kitchenette furnished room at the rear of the house. She switched on the light and let the door open. The boy could hear other roomers laughing and talking in the large house. Some of their doors were open too, so he knew he and the woman were not alone. The woman still had him by the neck in the middle of her room. She said, "What's your name?" "Roger," said the boy. "Then, Roger, you go to that sink and wash your face," said the woman, whereupon she turned him loose at last. Roger looked at the door, looked at the woman, looked at the door, and went to the sink. Roger looked at the door, looked at the woman, looked at the door, and went to the sink. "Let the water run until it gets warm," she said. "Here's a clean towel." "You gonna take me to jail?" asked the boy, bending over the sink. "Not with that face. I would not take you nowhere," said the woman. "Here I am trying to get home, cook me a bite to eat, and you snatch my pocketbook. Maybe you ain't been to your supper either, late as it be, have you?" "There's nobody at my home," said the boy. "Then we'll eat," said the woman. "I believe you're hungry, or been hungry to try to snatch my pocketbook." There's another one. I've seen 2 so far. "I wanted a blue pair of suede shoes," said the boy. "Well, you didn't have to snatch my pocketbook to get some shoes," said Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones. "You could have just asked me." "Ma'am." Water dripping from his face, the boy looked at him. It was a long pause. A very long pause. After he had dried his face and not knowing what else to do, he tried it again. The boy turned around, wondering what next. The door was open. He could make a dash for it down the hall. He could run. We're going to stop there today. I found 3 on the way in that section. Have one written down. I want you to leave this in your literature fiction notes. I want you to put this sticky note on those text connection notes in your fiction section. You can leave the resource binders where they're at. When you're done placing your sticky note and writing on it, like I said, place it in your fiction notes. We're going to come back to them tomorrow. Put your ELA binders away, and all right, you can get out of here once you're done with that. Great job today, guys. Thank you. That was awesome. We're going to finish this up tomorrow and maybe get to our second signpost called Aha Moment tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good day. TAs, please remember where we left off tomorrow. We are a little bit behind my other 2 classes, not by a lot, but remember where we left off. We'll pick up from there. Hey. Huh? Can you grab them and get them up for me?